Why do so many women love losers? We've all seen it before. Well, today we are going to hear from one of the literary goats of Japan, Yukio Mishima, on this issue. And you may be asking me, Ian, why the hell are we talking about this? Well, Right Conscious is the headquarters of Yukio Mishima and the greatest authors of all time. And we don't just sit and do book reviews and do shallow little scripted videos that are neutered. We talk on the cuff about the real issues that these authors were thinking about, no matter how controversial they were and are. And if you look at the playlist down below of some of my Mishima videos, I've talked about his books, his life, and some of his quirky philosophies, and we'll continue with hundreds of more videos on him and other authors in the future. And so if you like deep dives into authors and their odd mentalities, this is the place. And so enough from me. Let's now hear from Mishima. And I will say this is from 1970 in a magazine titled Elle, which was a young woman's fashion magazine. And why the hell Mishima was talking to a young woman's fashion magazine 6 months before his death will probably be unknown forever. But I love that this magazine published a guy just talking crap about them. Next, concerning male seductiveness from the perspective of women, men who are said to be seductive to many women are generally the object of scorn and contempt in the world of men. Of course, one could not say there is no envy or jealousy mixed in with that, but in general, it is difficult for such men to become the ideal image of men because women love the flaws that men would like to overcome and the weaknesses that men would like to avoid. Women who admire losers are overwhelmingly more common than women who admire winners. As men are primarily thought of as physical and mentally powerful, women rush to discover their flaws in order to bring them into their field. Cases where a man's spiritual and intellectual flaws are well matched with his physical beauty are most gratifying to women. And let me make a quick comment for all the red pillars out there who are like, yeah, oh my God, women suck really fast. 99% of the people in the world right now, whether they are men or women, are very superficial. And you need to make yourself great and improve yourself and not be a bitter asshole, whether you are a man or a woman, if you want to access and be able to date and marry and live a life with someone who isn't superficial. But Mishima takes a very interesting angle with this because he doesn't talk about fixer-uppers. He doesn't talk about women liking bad boys. He's talking about why women like losers. And so when Mishima says women love the flaws that men would like to overcome and the weaknesses that men would like to avoid, we are viewing this reality through his somewhat extremist standard. Mishima, by the end of his life, especially in 1970, even though he was bisexual, had a very classic view on what a man should be. A man shouldn't be attending a woman's birth. A man should go to the bar and play poker with his friends and then show up later after his wife has given birth. He should be wearing clothes and smoking cigs and sleeping in a separate bedroom and all this other stuff. But let's play with Mishima's idea here because I actually do believe in masculinity and femininity, and I believe there are the positive and malignant elements of both. And when I look at masculinity, like the positive side, it is, honor, intellect, autonomy. And I'm not saying that women can't have this because masculinity and femininity can be tapped into by both genders. And the unifying and the creation of a complete person means that you need to balance the masculine and the feminine. But does our society honor intellect, autonomy, people who care about protecting others? And the answer is no. And we have literal laws that prevent men and women from living that out in its totality. If you live in California or Oregon and someone's breaking into your house or on your property, you can't kill them. And for some people in Europe, that may sound crazy. But where I live, if someone walked into my house right now, I would take one of my mini guns and shoot them. And so the positive traits of both sides are what the other side generally needs to grow. So for instance, for most men, they do need to open up to their emotions. Like, the ideal feminine or the highest feminine has to do with care and connection, not just to other people, but to like the world and things and good communication. And most men really, really need that. And that's why in a perfect union, in a great marriage, both sides help each other grow. But it's not easy, you guys. Like, I've been married for years now. I have a kid now. Like, it is not easy to be open all the time. And you guys see me right now, and here I am, right conscious. I'm so exuberant, but I still struggle with that, as I know all my friends do. And having someone, a woman, to guide you through that and help open you up is so helpful. But the same is true for women, that if women are trying to work on more masculine properties, it's going to be hard. It feels painful to do. And so many of us want to go hide away. This is why Barstool Sports and the NHL and the NFL literary fiction scripts are so popular. People ask me all the time, who are your favorite writers? The guys at the NFL and the NHL, man, those guys are better than Cormac McCarthy, Tolstoy, everyone. And so men just want to recede and not have to have any emotional vulnerability or openness. And what's funny about Mishima is he's putting on a front here, because in actuality, we're talking about someone who is a great artist, someone who is engaged with many different types of relationships and explored so many archetypes in his head. And so Mishima is speaking from and Mishima was a very talented individual. Mishima, much like Hemingway, was forced to basically be a girl when he was young. Mishima went to, graduated from one of the best schools in Japan, received a watch from the emperor. We're talking about a very talented individual who had already accessed masculinity and femininity before he even became an adult. And now we're hearing him write 3 decades down the line. And so both sides don't want to transform. And so both sides look for the flaws both sides love the flaws that they want to overcome. Anyway, I don't need to get too much into that, but you guys know what I'm talking about. And so in a society where we are getting further and further from both of the positive sides of the angle. You know what's so funny too? I remember when Gillette came out with those toxic masculinity commercials or whatever, and obviously those were super toxic and weird, but people like to deny. I don't know who the fuck out there doesn't believe that toxic masculinity doesn't exist. And I understand it's been overused, but you have to be literally an idiot to not understand what toxic masculinity means. And I understand there's a politicized version, but we all know men who are absolute pieces of shit. And we can look back at history and find plenty of others, and also look at books and find plenty of others. Same goes with women. And so in our technological society where truth and connection are being valued less and less every single day, and I'm talking about the capital T truth, everybody. I'm talking about objective truth for all my little logic pros out there. Objective truth, that's not possible. How is that possible? And if you haven't tapped into just a side note, if you haven't tapped into objective morality yet, you are still back at level 1 of the game. You're still on Tutorial Island in RuneScape, killing chickens and thinking you're in the end game. And so, yes, women and men admire losers, because who are the losers of? So we can talk about the losers of today's society. We can talk about all the, people who we would describe as soy boys or whatever, all the weak men. But how about all the weak women? Who is the ideal for men? All the, the porn addicts out there. Who do they idolize? Oh, the girl with the big boobs and the big butt, the girl who's on Instagram, the influencer, or the perfect trad wife. Oh, the girl that isn't on Instagram and doesn't have a high body count and all this stuff. We all have these weird expectations, and we're not just looking for a normal, awakened individual. That's the last thing that we want. We have all these crazy ideals, which are actually, from a Jungian perspective, the voids in our own soul that we are looking for. Anyway, and so it's getting worse and worse on both ends every single year. I have a friend, and he is wildly successful, makes hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. He doesn't work very much. He watches this program. He reads a lot of the books that I like, and he refuses to date women unless they are perfect. And thus he continues having an excuse to just hook up with women, because I've met some of the girls that he's been with before, and they are the type of person you would want to marry. But I'm like, hey man, what's wrong? He's like, hey man, if I'm going to marry someone, I need at least double D boobs and a big ass and this. I'm like, holy shit. And that's cool to have standards. It's okay to have standards, but missing out on an opportunity to experience love kind of makes you a loser in the long run. And so Mishima does go a little bit into some woman bashing when he says, quote, men are thought as, powerfully, physical and mental, and women want to bring them into their field. But once again, that's everyone. Everyone is always trying to manipulate relationship partners to come into their zone so that they don't have to change. You want to show them your favorite TV shows and show them all this stuff. And so you don't want, because the ideal, everyone, is 2 independent, autonomous individuals functioning together in a relationship, and no soul projection is going on. There are no voids in the soul, no projection. And then you two grow together. You two beautiful beings of energy come together and create a pure third energy. And any flaws create impurities in that third energy. So Mishima continues at the bottom here. The gigolos of France are cultural masterpieces of this kind. Trends of Western clothes and accessories in the world of men mostly do not come from men who are winners, but men who cater to the wishes of women. And we all know this is true. Like the high fashion and fashion is not created by people who are balanced, sattvic human beings. Whether that is what Kanye West is pushing or what, just go look at whatever fashion catalog. That is not, I hate to use the word normal because I believe, as maybe you see by my personality, in a large variance of normal. Normal is got a crazy big range for me, but I've always seen extreme fashion choices as a way to actually hide your own insecurities and the beauty inside yourself or your own intellect, because if you feel confident and you've actually done something with your life and you have something to present to people or nothing at all, you just are satisfied with yourself, then you could make some fun fashion choices. You can wear a hat, you can wear some bracelets or a necklace as a man or a woman, and it's all good. I don't care. You can wear a tie-dye shirt or a poncho, whatever. But if you're showing up with half a shirt on, half a shirt off and crazy shit going on, it's okay. Okay. Why does this really matter that much? And I understand that fashion is an industry and is something that is progressing like literary fiction or basketball or whatever. And so things have to continue to get crazier, but you can innovate through simplicity. If you wish to see the most tasteful ideal of men's fashion and accessories, you should look at the clothing of first-rate gigolos in Parisian cafes. Of course, male good looks deserve envy for men too, but because men want to seek some kind of ideal image in there, men who wish to become like them must, above all, have as many male features as possible. Since men naturally grow beards, both the most feeble and manly men are like racehorses at the starting line by the standards of men. There, the male struggle for existence begins, and the most powerful and manly men win. But when viewed from the perspective of women who do not grow beards in the first place, what the hell is this logic? Men grow beards, women don't grow beards. Men in the arena of competition are invisible. They can only see uniform figures of men who are, when lined up at the starting line. It is surely natural, both physically and in terms of distance, that when women choose from among them, they choose the closest to them. That is, those who ended up in dead last when the competition began, because manly men immediately race off into the distance where women cannot reach them. And so this is an interesting metaphor, and for those who maybe find it hard to follow along, what Mishima is saying is that imagine women are like in the nosebleeds of an arena, and we're like having a race, and for some reason, many of us, let's say it's like a half a marathon, but we have to run like 8 of the miles on the track, and then we do a 5-mile road race, out there, and there's a finish line outside of the stadium. And so Mishima is saying that women start in the nosebleeds and just see a bunch of men, and then they run around, and then a lot of the men leave the stadium. But then there's a group of men who don't finish the race and, are walking, oh, my emphysema. And so shout out to anyone with emphysema out there. I'm sorry you're going through that. But then, the women go down, then the women go down there and then find all these men. And those are the men that they flock to because the other men are spiritually and physically super far away from them. And it's not the worst metaphor of all time. And like, as I was just saying, it's somewhat true that, hard chargers and these people aren't always respected. What's crazy, I'm not going to toot my own horn here, but at some level, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have experienced this, I was talking earlier about like superficial women and superficial men, that if you go really far in terms of building your emotional, physical, spiritual, and mental fortitude or like level, then the average, like normally, like a person who's done none of that feels threatened by you. Like they don't even want to date you. Like, it's a really weird kind of energy, but it's like you're almost like a different person to them. They're like, what? And obviously there's the case of like, the fascination of like the other and of the object and of like the freak who actually has a growth-oriented mindset. And there's also the case of the person who's growth-oriented, still having malignant elements and wanting to go dominate the normies. But in general, a separation does start to occur. And so Mishima then carries on and talks about some movie stars that we don't need to care about. But I'm going to start right here. I'm circling it right now. And whatever sexual revolutions may be carried out from now on, the seductiveness of men who look back at women and the power of men who surge on at the head of men will be in eternal conflict. In which case, male seductiveness from the perspective of men is in fact no more than a contradiction in terms, because he's saying that there are men who look back at women. There are men who should be going forward and look back at women, and then there are the men that go forward, and those men are the how we define those men are just always going to be a contradiction. And this is what just makes me really sad about our society now, with political polarization and many different things, is that when you look at the Greeks, when you look at the Roman, when you look at the Renaissance, when you look at so many different times, even just a couple decades ago, you could be a man and be an artist. But now with cancel culture and all this stuff, I mean, what male actor is the embodiment of, old school, masculinity and the balancing of masculine and feminine? Timothy Chalamet? Ryan Gosling? How about the women? Like, I don't want to sit here and oh, women in the 1950s were better. Women in the, obviously we've evolved, but it's sad to watch us having a grand opportunity, us having now the economic space and mobility, especially in the West, to be able to lift so many people up and give so many people the opportunity to balance the masculine and the feminine. And we just and first of all, we imploded those two concepts anyway. We imploded our connection with each other. We imploded the institutions and the things holding us together. And now we are all floating in space and are suicidal and fat and and angry at each other. And I don't think that Mishima was correct. But, when I look back, you can look at Mishima and then combine his philosophy with other people or see where it could have gone. You could have seen where, if taken the right way, how we could have ended up in a much better place. Like, I understand men had flaws, throughout history, and women. And I don't think that we should look at, men and women in this very classical way, because so many men do. So many men romanticize, I just want to go into the wilderness. I just want to be like the old days. I want a trad wife. Or they just want to live this life. But the course of history brought men, in the 19th century and early 20th century to a point that was very flawed, but did have a lot of stature and fortitude. And if that kept going with all the revelations, with psychedelics and the information revolution and all the economic revolutions that happened in the 20th century, if that stayed on course and didn't get disrupted by so many different things, so many different intelligence agencies, it would have been a beautiful thing to see where men and women would be, because we would be just as free. We would have just as many rights, but we would be so much more autonomous and beautiful. And it kind of saddens me to see what we've kind of become. And so, boom, there you guys have it. There is my analysis of Yukio Mishima. If you guys want to join my Yukio Mishima book club, I am running it over on Substack right now. I'm doing a bunch of other book clubs. I think we're about to read The Decay of the Angel by Yukio Mishima, book number 3 of the Sea of Fertility tetralogy. But I also think I'm going to add some more Mishima books to this round of my book club. I also have some exclusive Mishima videos over there. Or if you just want to support me and you love the channel, that is the best way to do it. And then you'll get instant access to 30 plus hours of content. But thank you guys for being here, and I will see you guys very soon in my next video.